I am a former religious cult member who spent 27 years having all areas of my life completely controlled by someone else. IAmA. I was born and raised in a small communal Bible-based cult in the US. I was a part of the cult until I was 27. Daily life revolved around a church and the pastor's wife, who ran the cult. The children were raised to be workers in the church and to give their lives for what the leader wanted. My siblings, mother, and I were once one of 9 families and other single people when the group originally started, but that has now dwindled down to roughly 3 to 4 families. We were not allowed to have friends outside the church, to live anywhere except a church-owned house, or leave the church without escort or express permission. As kids grew up and went to college, they were discouraged from getting jobs to pay for school, but instead heavily encouraged, coerced, to max out student loans and give the money to the church. Students' class schedules were denied or approved, as the leadership saw fit. The single-family unit was destroyed and everyone was pressured into viewing the group as one big family. I have been out now for 4 years and it has been one interesting ride thus far. Learning how to live in the real world has been difficult, but the independence and freedom I now have is irreplaceable. My entire family, except for my father, still attends the church. I still believe in the Bible and I attend church. Needless to say, I am extremely skeptical of dogma and religion, and I do my best to seek out truth and reject lies. What made you finally get out? Why did it take so long in the first place? I tried to get out when I was 19, but I was talked into returning. They use a lot of manipulation techniques, make promises they don't intend to keep. They told us that if we left, God was going to kill us. We were raised in fear and completely surrounded with fear constantly. As a result, I grew up very fearful of just about everything. We were also taught that the leader was God's anointed and we could never question her or her teachings or we would be killed. This was reinforced by stories from the Bible where people questioned authority and God punished them. There were several really bad things that happened when I was in my mid-20s that culminated in my leaving. One of these things was the pastor trying to have an affair with one of my older sisters. When she refused him, his wife and other leaders painted my sister out to be a whore and told the church that she had tried to seduce the pastor. I watched them drive my sister into deep depression and break her as a person. Every time I tried to say something or talk about the truth, I was punished or told I didn't know what was really going on. Eventually I had to get a job, met a guy who became my best friend and husband, and together we talked through many things, studied the Bible together, and prayed that I would know what the truth of my situation was. I actually had a day when I had an absolute revelation of what was happening and what that place was. So I left. Was your sister excommunicated from the church? If not, is she still in the church or did she leave as well? She was asked to leave the church and decided to stay as a way of annoying the leadership. I urged her to leave, as it was not a healthy environment. She is currently in transition, I hope, and it seems she will leave soon. I hope she has a place to stay, with you, and that she knows it. She certainly does have a place to stay with me and I remind her of it all the time. Did they just let you leave, or did you have to sneak away from it? Thanks for the IAmA. I had to sneak out. If you told anyone you were leaving, they would throw you out on the street with nothing and not allow you to get your things. Also, I knew my family would try really hard to talk me into staying, and because I love them so much, it would be hard to resist their pleas. So, I packed 4 bags with as many important things/necessities as I could and took everything to work with me that day. Actually, I took 2 bags with on the bus that morning, returned around lunchtime and took the other 2 with me when I went back to work that afternoon. LOL. After I got to work, I called my oldest sister to tell her that I was not coming home and that the only reason I was calling was so they wouldn't worry about me. I then told her that I didn't want anyone trying to contact me for a few weeks while I sorted everything out. I then had my coworker drive me to a friend's house. I had met this girl in college and we had stayed friends. How, I'm not sure. Fortunately, providentially, for me, she owned a house and had a free room that had just become available. She let me stay with her for 6 months until I could find my own place. Thank you for all the comments. Smiley face. I'm going to be called an asshole for asking this, but whatever. Why reject their teachings but keep believing in God? What makes you think they lied about one thing but not the other? I won't call you an asshole. It seems like your question's an honest question, and I don't mind it. When you find out that someone is lying to you about something, what do you do? I like to go back to the beginning of what they told me and look at everything for myself, and that's what I have done and continue to do with the Bible and my belief in God. I've found that what these cult leaders, and many religious leaders the world over, do is add or take away things from the scripture and teach their ideas about God as fact. These cult leaders twisted scripture to make it say things it never said and taught as fact ideas about God that are not found in scripture. So, I rejected everything that was not found or based in scripture, and I have based my belief in God only on what I have found to be true. I hope that answers your questions. Did they ever make you have sex and stuff? No, but there was a lot of twisted stuff that went on. Like what? Well, there were a lot of reports of priest and kid stuff, and growing up, I had to sit in a lot of meetings where they made adults confess all their sexual sins to the group. It was really hard to hear people you were taught to respect tell everyone that they wanted to get with young girls or sleep with other people's spouses. All the girls in the group were constantly made to feel that they were sluts and were being accused of trying to have sex with just about every guy around. There was a lot of emotional and psychological abuse around sex, and they tried their hardest to demonize it as much as possible. Are the cult leaders harassing or perusing you for leaving? I heard that is the case with some cults. Also, are there things you miss in a cult-type living? I have become public enemy number 1 at the cult, a place my father used to hold. I'm actually pretty proud of that. The cult leaders hate me and continually malign me to the members there. They are constantly coming up with lies about me and propagating those lies to both acquaintances and members of the cult. I have done my best to address every lie they spread about me in a loving, truthful way, and most times it ends up coming back to bite them. Thus, my infamous reputation at the church. There are many things I miss about living there, which is perhaps the strangest and most difficult to comprehend fact for many people. The closeness and sense of security that is developed in these places leaves you feeling empty and scared when you leave. It takes a long time to get over that. I guess what has helped me most is realizing that the type of closeness you feel is not a genuine experience, but rather an effect of the trauma you go through. In addition, that type of closeness is not meant to be shared with a large group of people in the way it is shared in a cult. Although it may feel great, it is ultimately detrimental to your health. I also miss my family, a lot. What's the story with your father? Can you meet him now on the outside? So, the story of my father is a whole different story that could probably fill another link on here. He remarried my mom 2 years ago and works every day to encourage her and my other siblings to leave the church. He has made a lot of progress in the past year, but it is a very tough fight. He is one of the best men I know and I respect him immensely for everything he has done. Personally, I'd love to hear about what your father went through to get out. Did him leaving influence you into leaving as well? I don't know everything he went through. Just bits and pieces. I know he spent a few months in a guest room at an old friend's house while he tried to regain his sanity. It was a tough time for all of us. He was heavily maligned by the church and the leaders consistently told us he had stolen money from people and abandoned his family. Since the time my father left the church, the cult leaders took every opportunity to paint him as a bad person to his children. I wouldn't say his leaving influenced me, but wanting to understand how he came there in the first place and then decided to leave definitely spurred my own departure. It seems like you've already come a long way and have done well at reflecting on the whole situation. Props to you. I understand that I nor most people on here will ever be able to understand where you are coming from, and it's quite awesome of you to do this IAmA. I'm curious. How does your family react to the lies the cult leaders make up about you? Do they believe them? I'm assuming that they don't, so from my position, wouldn't that lead them to begin questioning the integrity, for lack of a better word, of the cult? As in, if they are lying about you, why wouldn't they lie about other things? This is a very interesting question and I'm not sure that I can answer it sufficiently, but I will try. Sometimes, they do believe the lies the leaders tell, and then I have to go in and do damage control and provide tons of evidence to show they have lied. At that point things have become so out of control that my family sort of shuts down and doesn't know what to think. At other times they know what the leaders are saying is false, so they start making excuses for them and defending why they might be lying. Or they try to gloss over the issue and act like it's not really a big deal. That's what is happening outwardly. Inwardly, I have to believe that these experiences cause them to question their leaders, and that's why I make sure that whenever possible I show the inconsistencies of their leaders. Isn't it fraud to make them max out student loans to donate to the church? That just seems highly illegal. I've often wondered that same thing, but I haven't been successful in finding a way to do anything about it. The real problem is that the students who took out the loans would deny having done it for the leaders, and they would claim that the money went to living expenses. It's hard to prove in court when it's one person's word against another that those living expenses included putting a new roof and new carpet and tile in the pastor's house. My dad tried to have the IRS get involved, but they told him they weren't interested. I guess it was too small for them. How do people react when they get to know that you have been in a cult? Thanks for the IAmA. As far as people reacting, most look at me like I'm an alien with 3 heads. They don't know how to respond to that or how to treat me. Things usually become very awkward. It's not something I have been very comfortable sharing with many people. I'm thankful for the opportunity to do it here. Thank you for your questions. I really appreciate them. Were there threats of violence once you left? Not physical violence, but my family cut me off and said really hurtful things to me. They also threatened me with calling the police and having me arrested for trespassing if I returned to the house where I had lived. I went back to get the rest of my things and they gave me 2 hours to get everything. Anything I didn't get out in that time, they said I couldn't have. Of course, I was not allowed to bring any help and they refused to help me. It was one of the hardest things I ever experienced. That sounds like an awkward 2 hours. Unbelievably awkward and painful. I'm a filmmaker, and my next project is about deprogramming. Have you heard of the term? And did anyone possibly deprogram you? Or did you use exit counseling? And did the cult warn you about deprogrammers? I have most definitely heard the term deprogramming. My particular cult never warned about deprogrammers, but they did talk very badly about counseling and warned the members constantly about how bad it was. I think this was, in essence, a similar strategy to warning about deprogrammers. It basically kept you from wanting to get any kind of counseling if you left. I don't think I had any one deprogrammer. I think my life experiences, my husband, and the counseling I did receive have helped me to deprogram myself. It is still an ongoing process. When you leave a place like that, you don't realize how much you need to be reprogrammed until you start living life. As you go along, you start to realize it, and I've found that it's best to address each thing as it comes up. That being said, it's a very long, hard road, as my husband can attest to. It's been 4 years and I still have a lot to work on. In a lot of the cult situations I have heard about, there were allegations of sexual abuse. Any truth to this for you? There were multiple allegations of sexual abuse in the church, but the police were never called and no charges were ever filed. It's hard for me to know how much of it was truth and how much of it was not. This is still something I struggle with today. What was it that drew your parents to the cult? Did they restrict or filter information, i.e., control movies watched/music? How was the general interaction like within the cult? Thanks. My parents were drawn to the cult separately. My dad when he was just out of high school and my mom when she was halfway through college. I think the initial draw was having a genuine experience with God. At the time my parents joined, there was another man and wife leading the church and they were not at all cult leaders, from what I hear. It was after they left and this woman took over that the church started becoming a cult. This woman is very manipulative and can read people really well. She used her abilities to control people and things just got worse and worse. Growing up, they restricted everything. I remember when I was a kid that a couple of the boys in the group rigged a desk with a secret compartment for a radio in it. We would turn the radio on and listen to music when there were no adults around. We weren't allowed to listen to anything non-Christian. We weren't allowed to watch rated R movies unless the leader gave permission. I've heard that some of these restrictions have loosened a lot in an attempt to keep the next generation from leaving. What do you mean by general interactions? Do you consider mainstream religions cults? Or at least cult-like? Does your past exposure make you more sensitive to instances of blind faith/groupthink? I think there are several mainstream religions that operate in cult-like ways. The Mormon Church and Jehovah's Witnesses are 2 mainstream groups that use many cult strategies to control their members. I also believe there are many large Christian churches whose leaders use methods similar to those employed in cults to control their followers. And honestly, it makes me ill. I would say my past definitely makes me more sensitive to blind faith/groupthink situations. I never like it when someone tells me I should believe something because they told me to or because a lot of other people believe it. Any idea, program, or method of doing something should be accepted or rejected based on its merits and not on its ability to collect followers. Did breaking free from the church and seeing it for what it is cause you to question your faith at any point? Was it challenging to continue to accept the Bible and your religion? Absolutely. I questioned everything when I left. It was very challenging to continue to accept the Bible and, honestly, for a long time the only thing I trusted was what I experienced for myself. I think questioning things is healthy and I still question things today. I believe what I do because I have had my own personal experiences with God that I believe are real and true. I constantly read things and talk with people. I am always seeking. I don't know that I will ever know the perfect truth until I die. How did education work? Was there a school system for the K-12 set, or did they attend public school or other outside tutoring? We had a school system that used textbook at first and then transferred to a self-paced booklet curriculum. We were very rarely lectured. Most of the time we used packets that had information we were supposed to read and then answer questions. At the end of the packet we would take a test on the information we had learned. It wasn't a great system at all and I failed miserably at the whole self-paced thing. As a result I struggled with my studies in high school. What bizarre rituals did you have to partake in? Well, I don't know if you would count these as rituals, but I do have a few bizarre rules that we lived by. 1. Girls were not allowed to wear fly jeans. 2. All the families in the church lived together in a handful of houses. 3. The children in the church spent their entire day together, having only breakfast at home and lunch and dinner at the church. 4. As a child I was tied up in sheets to restrain me when I was being rebellious. 5. Group confession and meetings to straighten people out were a part of daily life. That's just a few. How did the church make money to pay its bills, except for exploiting the student loan system? Did some of the members still have jobs in the real world? Several of the members had jobs, and very good paying ones at that. These people were the breadwinners for the group, and if they tried to scale back their hours or change their pay in any way, the cult leaders would not allow it. There were also a handful of members who took a poverty vow and gave all their income to the church. Did this church anything good for you at all? Thanks for the IAmA BTW. Well, I used to think they had, but in retrospect, I am not so sure. Certainly, I learned a great work ethic and I learned some skills while I was there that the average girl probably doesn't have, such as knowing how to install drywall, painting houses, putting on a new roof, installing molding, applying stucco, fertilizing and watering lawns, using a jackhammer, building a parking lot, and the list could go on and on. However, I would have rather gained those skills in a healthy environment without the trauma that went along with them. So, I don't know that I can say with any real truthfulness that the church did do anything good for me. Do you find the cult made it hard for you to interact with people socially later in life? For instance, missing pop culture references, knowing you've missed certain adolescent milestones, being taken on a date, drinking alcohol at a party, etc. Yes. It has made it incredibly hard for me to interact socially. As a result, I have made many social blunders and it's taken me a while to make friends. Everything you mentioned has been an issue for me at one point in time or another. This sounds like Westboro Baptist Church for sure. Any similarities? Quite a few actually. It's frightening to read about them and realize how similar they are.